Hey everyone, it's Desiree. I am here with day 14 of my 2021 Christmas series. I saw this most adorable stamp set in my stash, and it is by Wild Rose Studio, and it's simply called Snowmen. We're going to do some very basic, very simple watercoloring to color our image in. Let's get started. I first want to start by stamping my image. I'm using a piece of my Canson XL watercolor paper, and I'm going to stamp this image towards the bottom of it. I'm going to create a sky scene with my watercolors as well. The ink that I'm going to use is my VersaFine black ink. I like to use this when I watercolor because then I can heat emboss. And I'm going to be using my Wow Clear Matte Dull embossing powder. This is becoming a fast favorite of mine because after it's heat set, it goes to a matte. It's not a gloss sheen, and I really like that. When I watercolor, when I use my colored pencils, I don't like that harsh black line. When I'm doing watercolor, I'm okay with it. So it's kind of funny how we move as we are creating. After I've heat set that, I'm just going to bend that paper around just to get that flat. I'm not going to tape this down to a board. I'm not going to be using a lot of water to this. The watercolors that I'm using are by Altenew, and this is their pan set. And I really like this set. I love the colors. I'm just going to do some very basic mixing here. And the technique that I usually fall into when it comes to watercoloring is a glaze. So it seems I do the same thing when it comes to my colored pencils. I put a base coat down, and then I come back with a darker shade. Now, as I'm putting my base coat, I do make sure that when it puddles and it pulls, I keep those off to the side. I like the blooms when it dries back and it moves back into itself. I do like that look. Some people don't, but again, to each his own. The brushes that I'm using are by Craft Mo. These were a limited set. They are no longer available. They did sell out, but I am just using a size 2 brush, or excuse me, a 4. So any 4 watercolor brush would do. And I'm just continuing to add in my colors here. Why I like to heat emboss when I do my watercolor is I don't have to wait for the other area to dry. It creates that barrier so the colors won't mix together. Now that doesn't mean that I don't get mixing together, which I'm fine with. But it just creates that barrier so that I can just keep moving through my image. You can see I'm using soft colors for each of these images, and I'm just filling in the areas. When I know one area is dry, I'm coming in over that with the same color. I may mix it just a little bit darker, but I'm just coming in into certain areas. I'm not worried about them to have that blended look. I kind of like that harsh look. It's almost like the images that you see from art impressions. They have that harsh line. And that's something that I tend to lean towards. I'm just continuing to fill in that image, adding in those colors. Again, I don't worry about light source. Usually, I always envision if I am having a thought of a light source, it's coming from the right. And that's usually how I do look at those images on some of the areas. But it's not something that I truly focus in on. Now, snowmen, they're white, but we do want to add some color to them. So I'm taking a black and really watering it down to get a very light gray. And I'm just adding that along the side of each of my snowman. So I think this is just an adorable little tiny family to paint. Of course, I'm going to add some, gotta have some rosy cheeks to each of our snowmen. and snow ladies. Yes, it's a wonderful family here. And just adding those in as well. I'm going to continue through to add the color when it comes to the present and the last scarf. And those I'm actually going to wait to dry. Just adding a little bit more shading to our snow people. We'll say that. Just to make sure that they do stand out just a little bit. One of the things that I also like to do, I'll either use a gray when it comes to a white, or I'll use a blue. It can be a light blue or it can be a gray blue when it comes to accenting whites. And you'll see me put in that gray blue down at the bottom beneath our snow people. Just going to add a little bit of red to the holly, and then just filling in the present ribbon using a very small brush to get in there, using the point of the brush. So here you can see I've got that black. It was a little bit too dark. I real quick came in with some water to wipe that up, and now I'm just coming in below it and then going to add water to my brush and really push that out. I will use my brush also with clean water to actually sop some of that color up as well. Here's where I'm dropping in that blue, and then again just pulling that through as well. That same blue that I used down below my family, I'm going to use up at the top. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a line of that up at the top, and then I'm just going to fill my brush with water and pull it down. I'm not looking for a smooth blend in the sky. I like it when it's not smooth. It looks like there's clouds going on in there. Again, when we look at our sky, a lot of times it's not that perfect solid color. There's different tones that are going through. I'll keep building up the color. I do want the top to be darker than around my snow family, because I want there to look like it's a glow coming from them. But you can see I'm just dropping this color in, and it looks great when it dries. I'm using a piece of gold foil cardstock. Now usually I cut out the center so that I can save it, but since this is a watercolor panel and I did do that background, by keeping that panel solid, it's going to help stretch that out. The tape that I use when I do a technique like this, I get from Uline, and it's their double-sided 2-inch film tape. It's strong and it just flattens that piece right back out for me. I'm going to glue this panel onto my standard A2 size card base. The gold was just cut a little bit smaller than the standard A2 size, so I cut it to 4 1/8 by 5 3/8 so that I get that slight white border. Now, of course, I have a snow family here. We are outside, so you do know that there's going to be not so much a blizzard. Again, I think we're still in the range of the 2 to 4 inches going on there. But because of this, we've got to add some splatter, and we are just going to put that over, making sure that I have a heavier amount up above in that darker area of watercolor. I do hope you enjoyed today's project. As always, day 14 of our 2021 Christmas series. Again, I hope I gave you some tips and tricks when it comes to using your watercolors. Maybe you want to try them for the first time. You'll enjoy them, but always, I encourage you to try. I encourage you to dig into your stash and take these techniques into the products that you currently have. All the products that I use will be listed down below as long as they're still available. If they're not, I will let you know. Let's not get upset. But again, dig into your stash and have fun with that. If you have any questions or comments, make sure you leave those down below as well, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. The holiday season is fast approaching, and by all means, enjoy it. Have fun. But most of all, enjoy the art that you create. It's unique. And it's beautiful. I can't say that enough to each and every one of you. Always remember, though, what's most important. Always be creative. And I'll talk to you in day 15. See you there.